Good morning, students. Let's discuss about the first lecture. First lecture is about the introduction of lab safety principles and practices. This is very basic lecture. We will cover different terminologies about the lab safety, workplace, hazards, and principles and practices, etc., and general lab safety. So, what is a laboratory? So laboratory or lab is the facility or the place that provide controlled conditions. Under those controlled conditions, we can do some scientific or technical research, whether this is undergrad or like a postgrad or PhD level. So the only difference between the normal lab or like the normal room or the lab is the conditions, because of course there are different the pathogens we are working, and we need like to get disinfection about those the pathogens, for example the fungal or like the bacterial pathogens, as well as some viral the pathogens. So the laboratories are basically the controlled conditions, and where we can perform different experiments. And the second terminology that will be commonly used in this course is workplace. So there is a difference between lab and the workplace. So workplace is the location. So it can be any location. For example, here I mention the location is about to do some work for for the employer. Okay. So the place of employment. So it could be like office like this, or it could be like a field, or it could be like any site in the engineering. We use like also the workplace for that site. Okay, so there is a little difference, but of course both lab and workplace are equally important while we were discussing, because sometime maybe I will give examples of the particular workplace. Those will not like fall for the laboratory. For example, if we are talking about some agriculture pesticides, okay, the chemicals, so then at that time like the field or the workplace is different than the laboratory. But of course the most of the material that we will cover is relevant to the laboratory. And then what are the principles, and what are the procedures? What is the difference between these two terminologies? So principles are a general scientific theorem or law that has the numerous special applications. There are different certain principles or the theories, so they have a special like applications across the the field. So it could be like depending on the field, so the principles will be different. And if we talk about the procedures, so procedures are the particular steps. Okay, so these are like the protocols. So these are the particular ways or the steps that we used to accomplish some the task. Okay, so these are the series of steps that we follow like in consecutive orders. For example, like 1 2 3. So if there is one procedure, like for example you can do like DNA extraction, and then you can do like quantification of DNA, and number 3 is you will do like a polymerase chain reaction to detect like for example COVID-19, right? So you have to follow these steps. You cannot jump like 1 to 3 or like 1 to 5 steps. Okay, so these are the series of steps in consecutive orders. So we sometimes call like procedures or the protocols to do some work in the lab. Okay, so if we of course this term is also very commonly we should like understand about accident, although like this is normal terminology that we use for the road accidents, etc. Okay, so accident is any unplanned event, because while you are working in the lab there are many chances like you are grabbing like certain utensils or like the different tubes or the different other items, and they can also be like happen like unplanned event can be happen, and there is destruction can happen. Okay, so this is unplanned event, and that results in injury or the damage or ill health of people or the environment. So this is a definition of accident is according to the lab. Okay, but if we are talking about like accident about the about the accident event that we talk about the road or accident for other like properties, so their little definition will be different, okay, but overall the meanings are the same. So with respect to the lab, any unplanned event that results in injury or the damage or like ill health of the people or the worker or the visitor, those who visit the lab, so we call them like accidents. And then another term, exposure. So this is also very commonly used because we use like a different chemicals or maybe different radiations we also use in certain labs. So then exposure, we also use this terminology. So it is the contact with the hazard or the chemical that cause injury. Okay, then of course the exposure, there is a certain exposure limits, we call it dose or like the limit. So this could be different depending on the chemical, depending on the the toxicity of the chemical, or depending on the dangerous effect of the rays or whatever, like the chemicals or the exposure we are using, like the rays or anything else. Okay, so the exposure limit as the dose, so the dose also we use is measured definitely for chemical, radiological or biological exposure. So this dose, so this is that defined like for example if we have like a certain the milliliter, if it's the chemical spill on our body, so it is not dangerous, right? And similarly, if certain like limits of the dose of the radiation, for example UV light, so it's not dangerous, but if we cross the limit, then it is dangerous. So this exposure limit is also very important while working in the lab. Then we use the terminology the safety. So safety is the state of being safe. So this is the condition being protected from any harm or like from other non-desirable outcomes. So it means so this is the state that we of course protect ourselves while working in the lab. So it could be like from different chemicals or different like the breakage of the different utensils. It could be due to different rays or different gases. So different maybe like the malfunctioning of different equipments. So all these things of course we should include in the safety. Okay, so harm. So this is physical injury or damage to the health. So this is a harm, or so sometimes we use like this chemical is harmful or this chemical is not harmful. Okay, so you should know like or remember like what is the harms, and then you can take like a particular the questions. And then is a hazard. So hazard is a potential source of harm that can cause to the worker or like the student or the people who are working. So it's called like a hazard. So it has the potential to cause the harm to the worker. So the better to understand about the hazard, here are a couple of examples you can see here. The first is a workplace hazard, then examples of hazards, and it is here you can see on the right side the examples of harm caused by that particular hazards. So for instance, if we talk about the thing, so like the example of hazard is a knife, and it can cause like a harm, cut, make like a cut to the body parts. And similarly, if for example the workplace hazard is a condition and you see like a wet floor, mostly like there is a caution if the floor is a wet, so that it cannot harm and you cannot slip down or you cannot fall down. Okay, and similarly if we talk about the energy, electricity is the hazard, and of course the harm it can cause like a shock, like electric shock. Okay, and if there are like organic molecules, organic pathogens, or the material like the biological pathogens, the material, for example the mycobacterium tuberculosis bacterium, and it can cause like a tuberculosis. And similarly COVID-19, and it can cause of course that the diseases. Okay, so these are this example can give you the better idea about the hazards as well as the harms. And in this slide you can see like the risk versus hazards. So hazards in the last slide you already understand well, but if we compare with the risk, so risk are actually the probability or the threat of the damage. So this is a risk, it's a probability, not like sure, right? So that someone will be harmed by hazard. Okay, so the hazard we also know like a potential source of harm. Okay, for example, the water. So if the water is a hazard, then what is kind of a risk? So jumping in to the water without knowing how to swim. Okay, so this is a risk. If we know we don't uh, know how to swim, then why you are going to take a risk, right? You got my point, right? And similarly gasoline, at the petrol pump, and lighting a match. So if we know the potential risk, and then of course we will not do the lighting the match. Okay, and similarly during driving, if driving is a hazard, and the texting while driving is of course it's a risk. Okay, so to avoid this hazard we we don't take this risk. Okay, so I hope it's very simple explanation about the risk versus hazard. Let's talk about the general safety policy, because this is the first lecture, so I will give you overall orientation about this general lab safety. So since our labs are located in the SQU, so SQU is committed to provide and maintain and improve the lab safety. So this is very important, and three informations. So SQU committed to provide, this is one thing, maintain and improve. So these are the three different factors. First, the SQU provide, for example, the labs, and then maintain and then improve. How they improve? So we will discuss in one of the lectures about the material data sheet, how the feedback, the office of the SQU, RMO. So RMO is actually the risk management office. Okay, so RMO is one of the officer, or one of the you can see a small organization within SQU, one of the department that handle all these the safety measures at the SQU. So their function is to provide maintain and improve the working condition in the labs in the SQU. And also SQU also strive to eliminate the dangers, and those are dangerous things in the for the health. For example, the lab safety, the electric safety, or any equipment safety, of course. So what they do, they always analyze and then they eliminate and they try to fix these the problems with the equipment, as well as with the gas, or it will belongs to the electricity. Okay, so because they want of course the physically everybody should be feeling better, and there is no health damage, okay, injury or illness. So while we are talking about general lab safety, so what does matter, for example, if we talk about a safe working protects, so then of course what does it matters? So it is matter of you, because you want to of course you want to save yourself, and of course you want to make your work safe, and of course other lab workers. Okay, so this is a kind of change. It does not mean I'm working in the lab and I'm safe, it's okay. Okay, no, the matter is you have to be safe, and also you have to protect other people also while working in the lab, whether they are visitors, workers, or your colleagues, your friends, lab fellows, your class fellows, and even the cleaners. Because mostly maybe you can see around 4 o'clock, many cleaners comes and they visit the labs, and they take out the the disposals, etc., right? So legally, what does the law says about this safety? So these are the things that we know, morally this is our duty. Okay, but what about the legal issues? Okay, so should we have any law about the safety? Of course, you must work safely. Okay, so this means the law says we should must work safely. This is one thing morally everybody try, but even this is our legal duty to work safely. And we also must not endanger other people's. Okay, for example, if I'm working on one chemical and it's dangerous, I know, like, okay, so and if I did not composed or decomposed, or like I did not put like back into the proper position or in the proper like cabinets, then it can hurt like some my other colleagues, or okay. So it means legally this is my duty to not like endanger other people. So must not misuse safety. Okay, so this is again like, for example, if I'm using any equipment, and I should not like misuse about the safety, so it will not like hurt other people's any equipments. Okay, so if I'm not like expert to use this, so better to take a training like with your doctor, with the ask to the technicians and other like a senior fellows. So in the last slide, we also mentioned who is responsible for the safety in general, all students. So everybody actually, if we say like everybody, then it comes under this also the same. Everybody, every student, every employee, visitors, cleaners. So everybody is working. So those are responsible for this safety. And of course, management, the SQU, the RMOR, so they are responsible to provide like a safe working conditions, safe equipment, as well as a training. So whenever like we need a training, so there are certain also training workshops for, especially for the College of Medicine or the College of Nursing, and the people those are working in the sensitive labs, for example in the hospitals. So there are certain lab safety workshops arranged by RMO, as I mentioned. So risk management officer. So this office you can see like on different, we have like a different stop, like a bus stop. So there you can see the RMO. So they mention like some of the slogans about the safety. You can see RMO. And while working in the lab, you can experience these different equipments, safety equipments, and you can see like the showers. This is the shower, this is the eye washer, and also like these are the different equipments. This is the kit that's used as a first kit, as a, and also this is the fire, the suppressor. Okay, so the fire extinguisher or fire the suppressors you can see. So these are the common facilities, those are available in each lab. So whenever you are working, so the first step is to get information about all these instruments, or the things that you need in future while working in the lab. And of course, you also know about the exit routes, for example, emergency exit routes, as well as location of fire alarms. So sometime also you are not like allowed to, or maybe like, but sometime like it's a help to start like a fire alarm, like the police stations. And of course, if there is any emergency situation, so you should, this is your responsibility as a student or as a worker. So notify your supervisor or any departmental coordinator or any relevant staff like technician, or maybe like your senior, or like the fellow those are going to give you the training. Okay, so these are the some emergency evacuation procedures. Definitely you should know about these. So if we talk about general hazards in the lab, so there are many like breakage of glasses. There are many shops like in the bio labs as well as in the chemistry lab. So for example, in engineering labs might be there are big equipments. They have like a different setting, but of course they have also many dangerous things. Spillage of chemicals, as well as there are certain gases. For example, the normal gas that we use like in household stuff, this is also come to the different chambers, but certainly we have some other gases, gas cylinders that we use for different other purposes. And then of course we have some extreme heat and cold stuff. For example, we have liquid nitrogen that is very cold, and they can burn your skin if you are not like properly using that liquid nitrogen. Okay, and then of course there is a chemical hazards, different chemicals. So we will cover in the hazards, chemical hazards or hazardous lectures. And biological hazards, if you are working in biolabs, whether this is agriculture, like animal sciences or human sciences, of course there are certain. So we will cover this biohazards in the one lectures. And then of course radiation, the normal radiation that we are using in most of the lab is UV light, UV light. So that of course radiation is used whenever we do like analysis of the DNA fragments or RNA fragments, or we are working on these protein analysis, of course. Okay, so these radiations normally we have to face these when of course there is a certain protection and SOPs for them, and of course fire, electric, and many more. So there are many more like other hazards that you can experience in the lab. So we all discuss in coming lectures. So this is very basic things about the glasswares, like the best or the correct techniques used for insertion are using the glassware, because they are very delicate stuff, and of course whenever we use we have to be careful about about the chemical is very cold or very hot, or there is like a pressure or vacuum, all these things. Okay, so while you are using, or if we are inserting some like a heavy metal inside the glassware, so it can break down, okay, during washing. So these are the common activities that happen. Okay, so the only thing that is very important to remember being a student, of course, first of all the usage, and the second, if some uneven the incident happen, then of course how you deal with those broken glasses. This is really very important. So their disposal. So forget about your experiment. So this is your duty to properly dispose of your breakage glasses. Okay, because this the disposal for breakage of the glassware is very special, and as well as very isolated. So you cannot throw your breakage of glassware into the normal the disposal. Okay, so there is a special bin that is used for the shops. Okay, thank you so much. And then if we talk about the general tidiness, of course, whenever like at the end of the day you finish your experiment, always clean the working places, and don't and put your all chemicals or the supplies that you used back into their original positions. Okay, if you take some chemicals from certain position, for example on the racks or in the store or some particular areas in the cabinets, then put them or keep them back into that particular area. Don't uh, leave all like chemicals or like pipets or tips or whatever the material you use onto the working bench. Okay, so of course this is general cleanliness or tidiness, and don't make this kind of stuff. Okay, if you use anything and you just leave there, right? And then otherwise, of course, the other people who are working, they get hurt. Sometimes you cannot see some glasswares or some chemicals. Okay, so there are chances of spillage or the breakage of the glasswares. So this is general tidiness, even while you are reading or writing. So you should keep your papers and everything with you. Okay, so while you are finish your work in the lab. Since this is very common practices while you are working in the lab, there are chances like you can get hurt, like minor incidents happens. Of course, then of course, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, there is a each lab is equipped with the first aid kit. Okay, so then you can you can apply. For example, if there is a minor cut on your skin, so first wash that particular area, so that if there is any chemical or any like contamination is on your body, so just remove or just the wash out that contamination. And then of course also try to control like the bleeding, and then you can use the first aid. There is a different kind of bandages available in the first aid kit. Okay, and after that if you think there is a your cut or like injury is very severe, so you can just visit the doctor or the hospital. So this is very important. Okay, protecting your health. So this is very common observation, because most of the chemicals, they have different kind of smells, and most of us might be they have some allergy from some chemicals. So this is really very important. If somebody has kind of some allergy, so you should talk to your supervisor or like your college department or whatever, who is the person is you are working with them, okay, if you're a doctor or like technicians, okay. So this is really important to notify that you have a certain type of allergy from this chemical or this smell, okay. Otherwise it can cause like a different kind of diabetes or epilepsy kind of diseases, okay. So this is very important first of all. And secondly, this is very important if you are grad student, for example, at the moment you are undergrad, but might be hopefully like in future, okay. So if you are going to work long hours in the labs, or even sometime like on the weekends, this is really very important. You need to get permission first, because this is a universal rule. While you are working in the lab, you should not like work alone, or not a single students allow to work in the lab. At least one or two like more students should be there. So for instance, why this rule is applied, because if something happen with you and nobody is there, so might be it can cause more danger to you, right? So that's why at least like 2% should work in the lab, whether this is on the long hours like after afternoon, or at night times, or like on the weekends. So might be now to you it look like who is working, but this is normal practice. Like postgraduate students or the PhD ones, like the students come, so they usually work like long hours. This slide is very important and you should never forget about this slide. So once you are in doubt, I mean like you are not sure about the chemicals, you are going to use some chemicals, and you are not sure about the what is the function of this chemical. If I mix these two chemicals, what is their effect, what is their function, what they will do, then please don't use that chemical. Don't guess like if I use this one it will do like this one, or it will be do by experiment like this one, okay. Don't do this one. This is very important. Sometime might be it can cause like explosion, okay. So this is really very important to understand the properties of the chemical, the function of the chemicals, okay. So if you are going to use to anything that you are doubt, or you are not sure what is the function of this one, for example, not only by this slide is not only about the chemical. If you are in doubt how to run this equipment, run this machine, please don't touch it, because this is dangerous for your health, as well as this is not good for the machine or the equipment, okay. So first get a training, basic training. It's not like too much training you need while you are working in the lab, the level 1 or level 2 labs, okay. So these are very training labs, they are not very dangerous, okay. So the level 1, level 2, there those we have the normal labs in you can see like the training labs or the students labs. So this is really important to cover different parts of your body while working in different experiments. For example, you see like the glasses. Although this is not recommended every time, but in certain experiments you need these glasses. For example, there are some special glasses. For example, if you are going to see or visualize the DNA into the agarose gel and under the UV light, okay, then of course you need to wear these glasses. And of course lab coat is of course this is compulsory every time. Of course gloves of course important while you are working in the lab. And this is really very important to cover your whole body, long pants or long whatever the dresses you are using, so it should be long, not like any naked part of your body, so that to avoid any chemical injury or like any dispose of any chemical on your spillage of any chemical on your body, it can hurt. And this is really very important uh, to to cover your shoes. So always recommended while working in the lab, so use the closed shoes, so that if there is any the accident happen, whether this is a chemical or like any other the equipment or machinery can fall on your the foot, and it will not dangerous. Anyway, so these are the normal procedures, but in detail we will discuss about the PPE, personal protective equipments lectures. So these are the, of course, important lab safety rules. Most of the things we already, I think, mentioned about to know the location of the safety equipments while you are working in the lab, and if you want to go to the home, don't leave your experiments like running while you are going in the lab. And also you have basic information. If there is an accident happen, what you have to do, how you can apply like the first aid kit, how you can use it and where it is. Okay, so all these of course dress up properly and follow the instructions of the labs. Mostly like in each lab they mention like the instructions while you enter into the main door. And of course don't play like as a mad scientist, as I mentioned in the last slide. If you don't know about any chemicals, so don't do that, and don't do like a new chemical experiment. Okay, and of course eating drinking is not allowed. This is the very basic the rule about working in the lab. So eating, drinking, and anything others like using for the cosmetics is not allowed in the lab. So don't taste or sniff, or don't taste or smell any chemicals. Of course it contains different vapors or like aerosols, and it can also cause like a certain kind of the dizziness, or maybe like you have allergy, and it can cause like epilepsy or like a diabetes like stuff. Okay, so don't experiment on yourself, as I mentioned here. So this is really very important, because each chemical has different properties, of course. So first you need to understand about those chemicals. And lastly, whatever you are doing, so you should properly do like your disposal. Like for example, if you are using chemical disposal, so chemical disposal is different. And if you are using like some papers, so paper disposal is different. If you are using tips, so paper tips, the all these different disposals have a different the bins. Okay, so finally dispose of your waste or the lab waste properly. Okay, so each lab of course they have a proper wastage bin into the labs according to the nature of the wastage. And then if we talk about the lab safety, that is driven by three factors. So there are three factors. For instance, the first one is environmental factors, second one is a personal factors, and the third one is a behavior factor. So these three factors actually drive the general safety. For example, environmental factors, facilities, design, location. So if the design or the facilities are not like the proper way, then of course like it can cause the injury, or it can cause like any kind of incidents or accidents. So of course the workers attitude, personality, and knowledge and training is very important. So this comes like the personal factors. So of course each worker or the students, they should be careful about their personal factors. So these are the environmental factor, of course. So RMO or like the SQU is responsible for these things. And behavioral factors cause like safe practices, age, routine, the fatigue. So these are the factors that's mostly like the workers need, personal factors and behavioral factors. So these factors are really very important, second and third, that each worker should take care about according to their health, the and energy, whatever their health, they know better. Okay, and if they need training, so they can get training. Okay, and of course then of course this is general attitude. Everybody has like a different attitude. Sometimes like some people, they have like more civic sense, right? So they can manage the stuff like work while working or even after working. So their working benches look like very different compared to the others. Okay, so that's why this is, but the basic things of course every persons or like the worker. So I used to use worker, the word like a worker. So worker means student, or like for example technician, everybody who is working. Okay, so sometime I will use a worker, so it means also you included as a student. So these three factors are really important, and it should be analyzed in all situation in the lab, depending on these three factors. And of course as a user of the laboratory, you should know like whether you receive the information that you needed. Okay, so this is your, that's in the previous slide, this is like your attitude, like the factor, right? The personal factor, behavior factor. So you should ask by yourself the information while you are going in the lab, so you receive all the information that you need. Okay, so if not, then what you should do, like, so, and secondly, did I give this information to others while working, other like people are working, so they also have this information? If not, like, you can ask him, okay, or her, I'm also willing to change my ways to improve overall safety. Okay, so this is really very important. Change my ways to improve. So might be one student or one person, so he or she has a freedom to work like at particular workplace, right? But while you are working in the community, like for example the lab, so its lab is not the particular for few peoples, because for example as session 16, 19, 20, like in the previous sections, many students come and they work and they go in the job, or like go in their specific fields, right? So many people come and many people go, so that's why, so you have to be willing to change your according to the situation, overall safety. And also, so you have to be practice whatever you learn, and about the lab, and of course you do like a well practices, like you do like practically. And of course if you think do you need still more training, so you can get training. I mean, like, not to attend like workshops or some others. Okay, so the basic trainings, for example, whenever like the research projects are like in our department, plant sciences, the undergrad students have like the special problem or research project in their final semester. So once they come us and they select us as a supervisor for training, so we give them like the training, like how to use this equipment, how to use this chemical, why you want to use this chemical in detail also. Although they took like this course, but again, like they need to refresh their course as a practically like first week. Okay, so this is really important. Being a user of the lab, you should get like the basic training, and then you can work it. So for everyone, if like for example you notice like a deficiency for the lab safety protocols, of course, so do I notify my supervisor, lab technician, or the concern? So this is the duty of, actually, for example, if I'm working and you are working, and if we can observe like one is not doing like a good job, right, in the lab, and of course this is your duty, you can train them. Like, if otherwise you can tell them uh, to the doctor, to the technician, so that they can train them, right? This is the, so ultimately the idea is not to injure himself, but also like for other people. So this is the safety, this is all about for the safety of other people. And if uh, we also need, for example, the certain signs, we already mentioned emergency routes, so these are the also common the information about the lab safety rules, and of course we already talk about the evacuation procedures, and these are the points that we need to remember, of course. Lab safety equipments, and of course the disposals of different chemicals, as well as the other disposals. Glassware should never be utilized as a food. So this is I think the new rule that we did not cover. Okay, so this is very important. So because we have very decent especially like maybe chemistry labs and bio labs, they have very decent sometime, the glasswares, so those look very beautiful, and you should not use them for any like the beverage or like the food containers. This is one thing. And secondly, the very important stuff, in most of the labs we have different freezers or fridges. Okay, so don't use those fridges or the freezer for the storage of your food. Okay, so this is really very important. Sometimes like some students they buy like some stuff and they want to cool down, like for example maybe the drinks. Okay, so they used to put like into the fridge. Okay, so not all, like, but there are chances like okay, so but this is really important because those fridges are particularly or specifically are for the storage of chemicals. Okay, this is not good for your health. This is also very important rule for the safety. Never try to repair any equipment. If there is any problem with the equipment, not try to, because you are not the expert one, and just report that the repair. Uh, Never lift any glassware or any solution above eye level. So this is really very important. I used to say not like only specifically for the lab. So you should also remember these few points about your practical life. For example, in your domestic life. For example, if somebody is working like in any store or like in the, for example, in kitchen, okay. So if you have some, the liquid that contains some spices, and if it's you are like just holding like above your eye levels, and if there is a spillage happens, so it maybe goes into your eyes, okay. So this is very important rule. Never smell and taste, of course, we already discussed about this. Do not pipette any chemical by mouth. Okay, so this is really very important. If you cannot find like a particular, the funnel or like any other like a pipette, so don't try like to transfer any chemicals or liquid chemicals from one container to the other using like by mouth. Okay, so there are each lab or like a furnish might be sometime you cannot get it, but you can try to ask someone, or then you can get the access of those the funnels or like the equipment that used to transfer the chemicals uh, from one container to the others. um, Chemicals splashing into your eyes, of course, immediately wash using different washers, and of course clean the affected areas, and use the first aid. Or if so you this is a normal procedure, so you wash your eyes like till like a 20 minutes, okay. So wash your eyes if there is a spillage happen into your eyes, and then of course definitely this is a serious stuff with the eyes, and just discuss with the doctor. So you can experience this one ramp, this uh, is a combination of three words, ramp. So recognize, it stands for recognize, assess, and then minimize. So for example, recognize the possible routes of exposure to a hazard chemicals. So you should recognize if you're using some chemicals, you should recognize this hazardous material can affect your body, but what is the routes through like a mouth, or like your skin, or like absorb to the skin, or like any, and or through like inject, or like how it can enter into your body, okay. Although in detail we will cover in some lectures, but of course each chemical there is mention the possible routes of exposure, okay. Whether this is can goes through your eyes, if this it can enter through your eyes, then of course you need to use your like of course the glasses, okay. So then you can use eyeglasses, okay. And of course if the exposure route is through the mouth, of course, then you cannot take the through the mouth. The level of risk to eyes, skin, ingestion, inhalation are the risks given set by the experiment. Okay, so this is the assess, and also these are the risk levels to these are the different the body parts. Those are can go through the ingestion, inhalation, or other the set experiments. Uh, Minimize the risks by preventing exposure through blood, laboratory practices, and personal protective. So of course, how you can minimize it. So the first is identify the routes, and then of course then there is assessment, and then how you can minimize. So by using good practices, as well as using PPE, personal protective equipment. Okay, so how you can minimize these whatever their exposures. So you can use proper PPE. So you can learn about the PPE according to the experiments, about like it's the simple training. So for example, if you are using some chemicals, those are dangerous, and even it touch your skin and it can absorb to the skin, so of course then you have to wear the gloves, right? And if something or some chemical that can go into your body like through inhalation, of course, right, then of course you will wear this mask, right, so that you cannot take or you cannot inhale those certain chemicals into your body. And similarly, if some chemicals they can enter into your body into your eye roots, so then of course you wear the eyeglasses. So this is really important to use a certain PPE while you are working on a different chemicals. This is the last slide providing the emergency numbers of the SQU. For example, here is the fire numbers. If there is any chance of fire, and if you see like and you cannot find anybody like technician or the supervisor, then of course you can ring these bell numbers. And of course these are the medical hospital numbers, security numbers, and also of course there is a technical assistant can also be available. Okay, so these are the emergency numbers, and of course in each lab we already display like these numbers on the in the lab. And of course you should also remember these numbers if there is something happen, and you cannot find like anybody here there, and then you can contact these numbers. So I hope you enjoy this lecture. This is very simple lecture and the basic lecture, and inshallah we will discuss about the second lecture soon, or maybe in a couple of days. Thank you so much. Stay healthy.